Oh,
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 looks
I see
like
it
we're
now.
live.
We're live now.
Looks like there's only a countdown. Yep, we're live now.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Oh my god. All right. So this is our first, like Jake said, first kick in the can and doing Cold Takes live. Hopefully
And
you've
on video.
heard, and on video. So hopefully you heard of modern manhood in general. And hopefully you know my voice and hopefully you know Veronica's voice. You definitely have seen Veronica because she posts a lot of videos on our circle, our inner circle, just showing us how the circle is run and stuff like that. So she's our ever loving admin there. So she, at the same time, Cold Takes in general is a different kind of show than Modern Manhood. And so we wanted to introduce this through a live format. And also because you're a fabulous circle member, fabulous next gen member, you're allowed to ask questions. So there's a little bit of and this is what I see on my screen. So hopefully if there's something different on your screen, just let us know. We have a technical support in the background, so he's going to help us out with this.
Thanks, Jake.
Yeah. So if you have a question for us during the show, we will be able to read it out loud for you. Hopefully something nice, something that's appropriate. Just be nice to us. This is our first show. So make sure if you have that, please put that in the chat. And then we will be able to answer the question, read it out loud for you. And none of that, or just enjoy what we're going to talk about. If you have a comment too that's like pertaining to what we're talking about, that's awesome as well. So the way Cold Takes works is myself and Veronica, we're going to talk about two specific topics that are mostly timely, like stuff that's going on. Sometimes it can be more general topics, and today we're going to hit a little bit more general than timely. But if, say, for instance, if something happens like during, for example, we had a Cold Takes just before the U.S. election. So we talked about Joe Biden specifically. We had other Cold Takes around, like a general topic was around pornography. And then we talked a little bit about that. So yeah, that's how Cold Takes works. So it's basically two subjects we're going to talk about. We're going to have some guests as well today too. So just be aware of that as too. So again, my name is Herman, and this is...
I'm Veronica. Yeah, thanks so much, Herman. Always a pleasure to get to chat with you.
Veronica, did you miss Cold Takes during our hiatus?
I did. I definitely missed having like one life because I've been living like two lives for the past year,
Yes.
and that's been really hard. So having one life again is good.
Yeah, that's good. Congratulations on your one lifeness.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be congratulated for dropping out of school. It's not always
it's
a cause for celebration.
It is because you're figuring like this. It's a hard adult decision, and I think sometimes we do need to like celebrate doing something that's good for you and good for your mental health. And like I think that's like we talked about this before, and I think it's always like a cool thing too. And I want to say this out loud in public just because it's like sometimes we think about those things like, oh, we're doing too much, and I think we think about it as a failure when we have to drop something out, but it's actually really good because you're helping your mental health and you're helping everybody else, right?
Right, and you can do that one thing a lot better when you're not stretched so thin trying to do two things, because yeah, that was the bane of my existence, like not feeling like I could do either thing particularly well because you don't have enough time. So
Exactly.
And yeah, Jake, to answer your question, I don't have a secret family, but I definitely definitely felt like I had two identities, two work emails, two work calendars, like all of that. I'm like, no, this is too much.
Yeah, no kidding. I have so many emails that I can't even keep track of. But yeah, anything that you're excited for the summer, by the way?
Well, I got my first COVID vaccine. So, like my first shot.
Too.
Yeah, right? I'm like, yay, this is so exciting. I think the little Band-Aid is still on there. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Very, very happy about that. So that it does seem like a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah,
I don't want to like
absolutely.
get my hopes up too soon because there's always space for things to go sideways. But it seems
What
like
vaccine
very
did you
hopeful.
get? Yeah, for sure. What vaccine did you get?
I mean, the best one is whatever one's available to you, Herman.
Of course.
But yeah,
Curious.
I got
What group were you
Moderna.
in? Yeah. It's good. Good for you.
Thank you.
I got the AstraZeneca, and I'm a little worried now, just because they're talking about holding those things back, and how do I get the second dose? But I hope I get the second dose. So
You'll be fine.
It'll be fine. I'm very excited to have it. Did you have any side effects?
No, I mean the standard, like, my arm is sore, but I was like, it doesn't compete with the like happiness that I feel. The straight
Absolutely.
up uncontained joy of being like, there's an end in sight. I get to hug my friends. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like, whatever. My arm is sore, but soon both arms will be sore from hugging so many people. So it's fine.
Yeah, I had a day where I was like, had a fever and I had like
Ooh.
fatigue, and then I was done. But I remember it was like a Friday, and I told my boss, I'm just like, I can't do this, guys, anymore. I need to lay down, and I had like a 3-hour nap. So that was the only thing. So if anybody out there that's like a little worried about vaccine, which is, you're hearing stories about side effects, or hearing like go get it, just go get it. Like I understand this whole choice thing, whatever. Like I know there's a lot of information out there, but the best information right now for us, I think we both agree with this, is just go get it. It's just make this go away. Make this whole thing go away. Please.
Indeed. Yeah. I would encourage anyone who's listening from Alberta just to like visit the AHS website for up-to-date info, and go fucking get it, and then we can hug.
Exactly. That's the point.
That is the point.
So wanted to mention that as well too with Mar Manhood. We're not the only podcast game in town, especially in Next Gen Men. There's also Breaking the Boy Code with Jonathan, who talks about boyhood, masculinity. It's a fantastic show. You should definitely check that out if you haven't. And as well too, we are growing in size in our podcast family. And we have a very special guest with us. He's in our room here. His name is Danny Perez, and he's from Ecuador. So we're going to invite him into this conversation, specifically just because there's a specific conversation that we want to have about language. But he has a new show. It's called Oreja Peluda, and in Spanish it means hairy ear. He can tell you all about why that's called hairy ear. So I'll let him explain to why that's the name of the show. But I wanted to introduce Danny up here. Jake, can you help us with that?
He is accepted and connecting. Stand by. There he is.
Go.
Yay! Hey, Danny.
Hey, Danny. Cannot hear you, Danny.
No. Oh, no.
No. No,
Hold on.
cannot hear
Microphone
you.
settings.
Dang. One of those days, right?
I know. It's one of those. Oh. Okay,
Veronica, why don't you tell us how we met Danny?
There it is.
Oh,
There we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
We could talk about how we met. We can all talk about how we met.
Yeah.
Hey, Danny, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Very, very good.
How are things in Ecuador?
Things are cold,
Oh,
rainy.
that's right. Is it winter over there? Is it getting winter? It's like fall, winter?
We're finishing up the rainy season, actually. So we're starting our sunny, warmer part of the year. But
Cool.
April and May are always kind of colder and most of all rainier than any. But yeah,
Nice.
it's going well. It's the evening here.
That's great. It is. We were just having a talk about like time zones, because I think it changes every once in a while.
Yeah.
In Ecuador with us, we're in mountain. I don't know which one he is, but he's like an hour, maybe 2 hours sometimes. So it changes. That's what we found out from our chats. Danny, supposedly there's a story of how you and Veronica met, and you, Veronica, and Jake met. What's the story? Well,
Yeah,
Veronica, you might.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure it was you came to a circle event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, I was doing a bunch of research for this podcast that I'm surely going to be talking about in a little bit, and as part of that research, I came across Next Gen Men, and it was kind of good. It was a week before, you were hosting one of the circle events, so I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was like, oh, this is very timely. I will sign up for it. And then I was and I joined. And well, in that circle event, I got to meet Veronica, got to meet Jake, got to meet Mark. Through Mark, actually, he connected us first with Jake. And now I'm stuck with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
That's the way it
that.
goes.
Yeah, it's very serendipitous, the timing. But I guess, I mean, it makes sense. You found us because you were working on your podcast, so I guess it's not as serendipitous as just like stumbling across us. But
Yeah, it was just very, very good timing. Like things, they puzzled up together very nicely. I was in the process of creating and creating a proposal for the podcast, and I came across you guys, and that worked out very well because you were also in the middle of in the break from Modern Manhood and in the middle of creating a new season for it.
Mhm.
And then I basically joined as well as part of the production team for Modern Manhood, and here we are. It's been very,
Yeah.
very exciting since. Yeah.
Here we are. It's very true, very true. Danny, you mentioned this podcast, and we mentioned it a bit too. Tell us about the podcast.
So this is Next Gen Man's new podcast en español, which is called Oreja Peluda, which, as you said, it translates to hairy ear. The idea behind the name, it's to play around a little bit with the stereotypes. In the podcast is the idea of the podcast is to create a space to discuss and explore and rethink masculinities within the Latin culture. So in the Latino culture, there's this very, very strong stereotype of what a man should be like, and this macho kind of stereotype. And in that stereotype, it usually falls within, the image of a hairy man with what they say, the pelo en pecho, and things like that. So the idea of Oreja Peluda is kind of have a little bit of that wordplay in there, and because it's a podcast, because it's a listening media, then the idea is to it's to play with the idea of the hairy ear. It's a representation of the masculinity stereotype, but also the fact that this hairy ear, it's many times something that it's blocking us even from listening and having deeper conversations and important conversations that need to be had.
Right.
So that's where the idea came from. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. And to have it in Spanish, I think is it's a gift to us, to be honest. It's something that's like having something in another language, because I think I think we'll talk about this a little bit later on. A lot of the media comes in English and comes in kind of a North America, even British kind of viewpoint. And sometimes, do you find that viewpoint to be a little bit different than when, like, your viewpoint in Latin America different than it might be in North America?
Regarding masculinity specifically? Yeah. Well, yes. I think as you said, a lot of the stuff that we are used to listening in here even comes from the US or North America or Europe and the UK, and it's very hard or very difficult to find content that is kind of regional and relevant in a more close kind of way. So through this, I'm hoping to kind of close that gap a little bit. And there are differences. I mean, culturally speaking, masculinity here in Latin America, I think, has, I don't know, it involves a lot more maybe violence that I think it might involve in other places. I think Latin American culture historically has been a very, very machista, kind of culture.
Right.
So it basically, it's important to kind of point that out in a way that says, well, it is bad in other places, and it has been bad around the world, really. But we need to look at ourselves. We need to look at our culture, and we need to, to discuss, not as if it's something external, because maybe having this external look of this is happening somewhere else has led us to think, okay, it's not really happening for us, or it's not really bad for us. But the truth is, sometimes it's even worse for us, but we're just not talking so much about it. So
Right.
I think it's important to do that, and to look at ourselves in the mirrors and have these discussions and say, well, I know it's very uncomfortable to do it, but it's necessary to finally start talking about this more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, can I jump
Go for
in?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you've been telling people about the podcast, Danny, what is like the reaction you get from folks?
Up until now, I think for the most part, it's been positive, because we're a new podcast. So far, I think we've been preaching to the converted kind of thing, It's going to take us a while to reach more people, and it's going to take us a while to kind of leave the social bubble that we are already in. So when that starts happening, I'm guessing we will see a bit more interesting comments, maybe. But so far, it's been very accepted, and I feel also very grateful for it, because in a way, it's a way to start kind of creating a solid base to then grow and go into different spaces. We are definitely planning to maybe take this to totally different social places and I don't know, public radios here in Ecuador and maybe in other countries and things like that will reach obviously more people that haven't necessarily had these conversations or might not even agree with a lot of the stuff that we're saying. And that's when, the challenge will become more, bigger. But so far, I think things are going well. We have been able to connect and network with some places around other countries as well that are doing these things. So I think for the time being, we're kind of building this network, and then we'll see as we grow. The idea is obviously to grow outside of it, but I guess it's how it goes when it's a brand new thing,
Totally. Yeah. Can I get one more question in, Herman?
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay, I was just checking.
Yeah,
I know
you're
you're
one
like,
of the hosts too. You go for it.
Well, you're like, we have a schedule, and I'm like, well, I don't. I'm here all night. So that's the thing. I'm curious, Danny. Like, why did you want to start Oreja Peluda? I don't know if I did that right. But why did you want to start it? Oh, good. Yeah.
Why? Well, there were some circumstances that freed up my time professionally as well. Like I was working full time, and then I wasn't working full time, so I had a lot of time. And along with my partner, we wanted for a long time to create kind of a project together. So we started to think about it, and she was like, "Well, we love podcasts, and right now we're enjoying this kind of medium. So let's do something with it." So we started kind of planning the thing together, and for me, it's also been kind of several years. These last few years have been very important in my kind of unlearning of how to be a man, and how to learning about feminism and learning about gender equality and so on. So it's been a few years of kind of something that's been building up inside of me. So when these circumstances came together of having enough time to create and bring a new project about and be able to plan it and do it with my partner and put it together. And obviously my background is in music production, audio production, so it's something that I really love and enjoy doing. And I'm a very curious person, so I just really enjoy jumping into something new and learning new things. So it kind of clicked at that point. This was kind of September last year or something like that. And we started putting the project together. So it was like I've been working in it. I had been working in education for a few years before that, and all those experiences were talking to me in a way that I felt like these conversations were really necessary to have. And I felt, well, this feels like the right moment to do something about it. And the more we're doing it, the more I'm learning, the better it will get, obviously, and hopefully. But yeah, I mean, it's a way of at least exteriorizing or start to put out there my own questions and my own doubts and learn from it as well.
I love that.
Yeah, that's really good.
Mhm.
Veronica, you have something else to say? Or
Oh, well, I mean, I could just keep talking forever, but no, I'm really glad that you found us, Danny, and I'm glad that things did line up for you in that way that made sense. And yeah, you're contributing a huge piece to the conversation, especially, like Herman said, and like you've echoed, like being able to communicate this in another language.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right?
Yeah. I felt like something that wasn't happening much, and I'm really happy to have found you guys as well, and now be able to work along with you, having Next Gen Men, as such an important part of Oreja Peluda. It's so great. So I just hope that we keep growing together.
Absolutely. Yeah, Danny, and like I wanted to talk a little bit more about that language piece specifically, because you're bilingual, and it's interesting because all three of us are bilingual. Veronica is bilingual in French, and both of us are bilingual in Spanish. And I always find this in, when I mockingly bug a lot of English speakers, being like, English is such a weird language. It is just like, it's such a mutt language. It doesn't really have it has rules, but then you break the rules all the time. And it's such a, like, even I talk to people in England and I'm just like, you guys you just like breaking your own rules. You guys invented the language and you still break your rules that you have. However, I wanted to get you and Veronica, your thoughts as well too. Like, what are your thoughts around language in general? Like how we communicate and how we communicate in a way that may be gendered? Because I know, for example, in Spanish and in French, there are gendered connotations, or like gendered verbs or gendered nouns, even just the way that we say things. Have you ever thought about like how that has contributed to kind of our gendered society? Like anyone can answer this question.
Danny, do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Okay, I can start. I think the language has a really big impact on how we gender, our behaviors. Spanish has this way of, and I think every language that has a gendered, language, they have a way of, when they generalize, they will always use kind of the masculine pronoun. So if you say humanity in Spanish, you usually say, el ser humano, or el hombre, and it's implied that you're, including women and men by saying el hombre, which is men. And I think historically that has a really big impact on, how that's led to maybe the superiority of men over many years. And I think language is created by, the society and the historic time where we live in. So I think it's something that can be changed. And I have many close friends, family members, and that seem to disagree in the fact that if it's like the grammar, if it's accepted by the Real Academia de la Lengua, which is the entity that says this is proper Spanish and this is not proper Spanish.
Colonial.
If it's in the dictionary, then it's right. There's no way, or there's no reason to think differently or to change it because it's incorrect. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's incorrect. I think it's necessary. I think that language needs to evolve. And I think it's doing it slowly, but we're adopting new ways of kind of take the gender out of the language. So we're adopting, I don't know, the use of the E instead of O's and A's for the ends of the pronouns. And, instead of saying niños or niñas, now we're saying niñes. So are things like that are not approved grammatically or, like officially, but it's happening. And I think language will evolve eventually, or needs to evolve to reflect that.
Totally. Same with French. I've always laughed and also been like completely perplexed as to why like inanimate objects have a gender. You're just like, why? Why is la chaise feminine? The chair, it's a chair. So yeah, stuff like that you're like, ugh. But even like professions, right? And for even some professions like haven't had female equivalents for a long time because there weren't any women supposedly who did those professions, right? So there just wasn't like there's directeur and directrice, right, for like director, but there's other professions where there just hasn't been like a female version of that.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, and we can see it in English too, like fireman. I'm like, I don't think anyone says it anymore. I think people say firefighter, but like the fact that we probably learned fireman when we were kids is just like, oh yeah, it's telling you exactly who that's supposed to be, right? And even just like, I think there's words too, like if you actually looked at the gendering of certain inanimate objects in French, sometimes like the more masculine or like the more action-oriented things versus like the more like, it's like the more inanimate it is, the more feminine it is. And you're like, okay. So that's why the chair and the table are female. So just strange things like that you're like, okay, yep. I think Danny's completely correct in like how this shapes our world in like really subtle ways. Even just mankind being something that people have said for a really long time, and I think people are moving towards being like humankind, but like whatever. And I'm even just remembering when Jake and I visited Quebec, folks thought it was a little bit weird that I asked them what pronouns they used. Because I guess we're getting really used to doing that now, I think, in like English-speaking Canada. But they were like, whoa, that's weird and different. And I was like, oh, is it? Like, because you do have il, elle, and on in French, which is very similar to like he, she, and they. So I'm like, people could use like a gender-neutral singular pronoun in French, but I don't know how often it's being used. So if anyone else on the call speaks French and knows more, they can tell me. But yeah, it was just an interesting thing to see.
Right, like that.
Sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
So just talking about those, those pronouns, that was something that I immediately learned on the circle event, because before it, I hadn't seen it, and I adopted it straight away because I think it's very important and very powerful and just very a great idea, and everybody should be doing that right now. But I'm glad that finally it's getting adopted in some places, and I hope that in Spanish it will also start to get adopted more broadly.
And in the information of pronouns, like Instagram has finally adopted to putting pronouns in your profile now, so you can do that now, which is a fantastic thing. It's huge. It's a huge platform to be able to signal that out, that's something that's important and good to have. And it's part of the actual like user experience in that. And Danny, I wanted to ask you about like even the word like Latinx. Like, is that something that's been adopted? Like, I know I've seen it. I usually see it in more like younger publications or like more leftist publications. But you're on the ground there, like in Ecuador. Do you think that term has gained a little bit of steam?
It's I think it has, but maybe the use of a vowel has become more accepted because of a matter of pronunciation. Like Latin X, the use of the X was or is still used, instead of the A or the O at the end of the word. So when you write things like, again, niños or niñas, you could replace the O or the A with an X. The problem is that, it then gets more open to interpretation of how you pronounce it if you're reading it out loud. So
Right.
written, in written it works very well, and I'm guessing you read it out, or you read it for in your own mind, and there's no issue. But if you're reading things out loud, then how do you decide how to pronounce that X?
Mhm.
And I'm guessing that's why the use of the E became a bit more widely used, because it prompts you to just pronounce it the way it's written, and it basically closes the gap for confusion in terms of the pronunciation, but the intention is the same.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that it hasn't been adopted as much as people wanted to think, but I think the E has been, because it's just you can say it more freely.
Yeah, I think it started with the use of the at symbol. Like before X, we were using the at symbol to include both the A and the O.
Oh, interesting.
That's really creative. I
But
like
then
that.
it changed. Then it changed to the X, and then it changed to the E. And people are still using many of these, that have been used before. But I think the E is now the widest, the broadest used. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything like that in French? Have you noticed anything, Veronica, that's kind of trying to be inclusive in regards to written language or anything like that?
Not in my experience, but I'm also more of a listener than a reader in French. I listen to CBC in French to get news that way. It also just it just helps to be hearing it. Yeah, I haven't. And I was just also thinking of, Danny, what you said about addressing groups of people. It just reminded me of the funny rule of if there's a group of people and they're all women, you address them as elle. But if there's a group of women and there's one guy, you address them as il. So
Yeah,
it's it doesn't matter.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, one dude, and all of a sudden that group is there's really no there is no plural gender neutral term, but there's a singular gender neutral term. So it's very weird. But I don't understand. I might have learned how to speak it, but I'm still I don't understand your rules, why you did that. I don't know.
That's a lot of language, I'm sure. That's all right. So I want to wrap this conversation up, and I think that's been really good, Danny. So I appreciate your time being here. But what is, if you were a Spanish-speaking person or a Spanish listener, and you're listening to Hora Capeluda, any specific themes that you want people to pick up on when they're listening to it? Is there anything that you're please listen to this specifically? Is that something that I am emphasizing?
Well, we've released 2 episodes so far. We'll be releasing a new episode every month. And so far, if you're a Spanish speaker or want to listen to something in Spanish regarding masculinities, and you listen to the 2 episodes that we have out, I think 2 very interesting and punctual things might be on the first episode, we have a little bit of a discussion around terms that are adopted or are being adopted now in Spanish for describing different masculinities. So there's a book about it, and we discuss a little bit about it on the episode about what implies to use the term in Spanish, new masculinities, positive masculinities, anti-patriarchal masculinities, and a few other terms. So that's quite an interesting conversation to have there. And in the second episode, we talk about the F word, so feminism and
which one? Yes, feminism. Yes,
and how masculinity can and needs to listen to feminist theory a little bit more. And there particularly we speak to a guy from El Salvador who is the director of a school of masculinities, is called, there in El Salvador. And he tells us a little bit about his experience, from him entering a workshop on masculinities to his learning process and then founding this school of masculinity. And it's very interesting to hear, the way that he explains and tells us about his own experience in unlearning whatever, the all of the stuff that we learn when we're little, and then readopting our behaviors and making changes. So I find that very powerful and very interesting to listen to.
That's
wonderful.
awesome. Yeah.
So if anybody's interested in listening to Oreja Peluda, you can check that out at nextgenmen.ca/listen, if I'm not mistaken, or you can just check out Oreja Peluda just on their website or online.
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you hear,
yes.
wherever you listen to your podcasts.
You can find Oreja Peluda. Danny, muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for being here.
So good to see you. So good to speak to you.
Yeah, and we'll let you go, and hopefully you have a wonderful Thursday.
I will do. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Bye, Danny. Oh, he's gone so quick.
So quick. So quick. Look at that. First guest in Cold Takes. That was great. That was a great conversation.
Yeah.
He's been fantastic in helping us out, not only with our Oreja Peluda, but with Modern Manhood as well. He's been one of the major architects in that show, and you'll get to hear a lot of his handiwork in Modern Manhood, and he's fantastic in that. He's really good. So, first of all, before we should let Jake sweat a bit, what are your favorite podcasts? What sort of podcasts do you listen to?
Oh my God, you should be asking Jake this because he's really like the podcast
He's the podcaster,
king.
right?
He is the podcast king. And actually on my new phone, so I used to have like Google Play Music app, something or other, and I got like a bunch of podcasts on there and it was great. And now I like don't have that. I have YouTube Music and there's no podcast. So I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
so I can like listen to them on my computer, but otherwise I'm like, I have to like find the website or whatever and like hope that it like opens in a Chrome tab on my phone and like works out for me. It really sucks. So like literally right now, like not listening to any podcasts because I can't. But Jake has told me that I need to listen to How to Save a Planet because he says it'll save me from my existential doom, which sounds really nice. So you gotta check that out.
Yeah, for sure. How to Save a Planet. I haven't listened to it, but I heard it's really good. Yeah, and like honestly, like if like I'll show you, Veronica. There's many things that you can do to listen to podcasts.
Yeah. The other problem is my phone doesn't have a working headphone jack, so if I wanted to listen to it out and about, it's very difficult. I think I need to get AirPods, but I don't know if they work with Android. Who knows?
Get some Bluetooth speakers, whatever.
Something.
Yeah. All right. And Danny.
Oh yeah, Other Men Need Help is great.
Other Men Need Help is really, really good.
I like the NPR podcast too. Back when I had podcasts, I like the NPR one. It was nice.
Let me see. I was looking at my podcast catcher. I use an app called Pocket Cast. That works out really well. It saves all my podcasts. I've been talking about this a lot. I've listened to Behind the Bastards, which makes you it gets you really good information about people who are bad. Right now they're talking about Dr. Phil. It just gives you like the backstory.
You just want like the celebrity trash, like
no, it's not celebrity trash. It's just it's like gives you the backstory of why these people are like bastards. And like
so why they're trash? It is celebrity.
Yeah, well, no, because it talks about history too. There's one about like talks about like old conspiracy theories that were really terrible, like old anti-Semitic anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. There's also like one called like India's most famous con man, like the family that stole Malaysia, like just like historical things that have been. Like people who are generally bad, and there's some people who are just like you know them. You just want to know why they're bad and why their history bad. Like they did one on like what's his face, Rush Limbaugh too. That was really interesting. And anyways, that's one I listen to a lot. But actually, yeah, let's bring Jake in and he can tell us all about the podcast
his
that he listens
many
to.
many podcasts. He loves Canada Land. Canada Land is probably his favorite. Canada Land is good. Hey, Jake.
Jake, tell us.
Talking smack about me.
Yeah, only a little bit. That's standard, though.
We are a podcast household. My partner listens to a lot of podcasts. She is really into the true crime ones. She's constantly telling me about serial killers and murderers, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, why do you listen to these things?
I don't know how she can do it. I would be
No.
so scared.
Yeah,
But you know
our-
me, I can't even watch
Yeah.
horror movies.
Well, our Sarah, Next Gen Men Sarah, is also really into those. So, anyways, I don't get it, but she's telling me all about that. She loves this other one called Ologies, and every episode is like some sort of science ending in ology, and they have some expert, like,
Oh yeah.
I want to say mansplain, but like it's an invited mansplain of like, what is science?
It's just an explain.
Yeah,
It's
I
not a
guess-
mansplain. It's just a normal
Yeah.
normal explaining.
Other than mansplaining, explaining. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
And I'm just a glutton for punishment. For me, it's just news, right? Every day I pretty much listen to New York Times, The Daily, CBC Front Burner. So I always know what's going on in the States, what's going on in Canada. And then to Veronica's point, I really, really love Canada Land. That's been a mainstay for me for years because like, one, we need media criticism because like our media landscape in Canada is so shit in terms of like capitalist overlords running everything and their prerogatives slipping through. So it's, you know, as annoying as Jesse Brown can be, like, it's great that there's someone who's calling bullshit. And then some of their like side stuff is like really good. I still haven't listened to Thunder Bay, but apparently it's
What?
like
You haven't listened to
the
Thunder
best.
Bay? You
I
haven't-
know.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
That was really good. That was really
But
good. It's
they have,
probably my
like-
favorite from them.
They have like side adventures, and like, you know, the Commons podcast is really good. There was one where they talked about like nepotism and like families in Canada holding a lot of power. I thought that was really interesting because you don't really get a podcast that like dives into that. They have a new political podcast called The Backbenchers, which is really cool. And it just provides diverse perspectives. They have, you know, Emily Nicolas, someone I've really liked for a long time. She's a Black female journalist in Quebec, and she calls a lot of bullshit on like the Francophone part of Canada, where like, you know, Anglophones don't get a lot of insight into. So, you know, building on the conversation you all just had a little bit about language too. So I think podcasts are like a really powerful medium because like to sit and watch a show, well, one, nowadays I have ADD, so I'm usually like flipping through my phone while I'm watching a show, and it's really just not good for my brain, but you're kind of committed. Whereas with a podcast, you're, you know, on a walk, you're running errands, you're doing the dishes, you're whatever. So your brain, your body's occupied, but your brain can still really like grapple with these things. So I love podcasts.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Jake dusting off his soapbox. Just
No,
I love podcasts more
get
than
it.
It's true. It's true. He does. He listens to them all the time. And Jake, to answer your question, the NPR one. Sorry, I didn't know there was more than one. I think it was the TED one where they like interview people who've done TED Talks. And then like play little clips from their TED Talks. So it sounds like that ology one almost because you get different experts like kind of explaining.
Well, here's me indulging, I guess, a little bit of mansplaining. NPR is like CBC, right?
Yes.
So like, there's so many different.
They
like,
have a
shows and
bajillion
stuff
things.
Like that. Yeah.
Thank you, Jake.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But
Yeah.
they put out some really good stuff. They do.
Yeah, they
Hidden
do.
Brain. I love Hidden
Yeah.
Brain.
Oh,
That's a good one.
I think
Hidden
I
Brain's
also
really good.
subscribe to that one.
Yeah. And
Here we are.
speaking of Spanish stuff, NPR also does a Spanish language show. If you are speaking Spanish, it's called Radio Ambulancia. Danny knows about that one too. He reached out to Radio Ambulancia. I listened to it too because I think it's really cool. There was like one episode talking about how he talked to the person who does the dubbing. Radio Ambulante. That's very good. Thank you. Who does the dubbing of the Simpsons episodes in Spanish. So he does the voice of Homer in The Simpsons, but in Spanish. And it sounds completely different. Like, you should go look up like a YouTube of what Spanish Simpsons sounds like, and it'll mess with your head. You're like, this is wrong. But it's there. Yeah, Radio Ambulante is very good. But anyways, the reason why I wanted to talk about podcasts is because, well, first of all, this is a podcast. Like Cool Takes in general is a podcast. Mar Manhood in general is a podcast. Breaking Blue is a podcast. Breaking the Boycott is a podcast. Jake, why are we doing podcasts? Why is Next Gen Men doing podcasts?
Because he loves them so much.
Yeah, I'm just really indulging myself. I'm bringing together the people who I want to listen
Passion
to.
project. This is.
It's really all for Jake. No one else.
So years ago, this is how Herman and I met years ago. I'll back up even further. When I think about Next Gen Men and the work that we're trying to do, when we talk about our mission, it's to create spaces to engage, educate, and empower boys and men around gender and equality, right? And when we say create spaces, it's pretty nebulous. What does that mean, right? So in the past, pre-pandemic, everyone needs to qualify things of pre and post-pandemic, but that looked like an after-school program for 12 to 14-year-old boys. It looked like getting together in co-working spaces, in pubs, in wherever we were given permission to gather in 5 cities across Canada to have conversations around gender and masculinity. It looked like going into male-dominant workplaces and working with the leaders there about gender and masculinity. But those are, physical spaces. And if we clung to that idea of these physical spaces through the pandemic, we would have failed because those weren't available to us. So through our pivots, we created a Discord community for boys. We moved our community conversations onto Zoom. We built a private forum. We created a book club that we facilitate conversations from, right? We still are achieving our mission. And I see podcasts through that, creating a brave space through podcasting to talk about gender and masculinity. And, I often say this facetiously, but I often see us as kind of the marketing arm of men and feminism. And podcasting is a great way to get a message out and give people content to engage with. And part of the reason why we're doing this on video now is to create video content for people to engage with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's interesting when I think about because Marman has been around for about 5 years now. So that was in 2016, right? 2016 was a big year for a lot of people. And
why? What happened?
Don't worry about it.
Why must you remind me, Jake?
Don't worry about it. Not important. So it's funny when I first started thinking about doing modern manhood, and I realized how the landscape of masculine, podcast about masculinity, podcast about feminism, how it was. So if there was a podcast about feminism, it was usually run by women, which is understandable. And they talked about gender, and it's usually through the experience of feminism in women. And again, not disparaging, I think those are still valuable conversations that they should happen, and they still happen. However, there wasn't a conversation that was having in the space of masculinity in general. And if there was, it was done through a very toxic lens. So it was pickup artistry, it was MRAs. That was not in the height of MRAs. I think that was 2013. It was the height of MRAs, but still there. Or there was just just ridiculous, oh, look how bad feminism gotcha, these triggered feminists and stuff like that. That was the landscape of any type of masculinity. And of course, there was Joe Rogan too, right? He was still there. He was part of that conversation too. So it was bro talk, or it was guys being dudes. And so when I created Modern Manhood, I thought I was I must be the only person doing this. But then when I started going into the space and actually doing it, you find podcasts like our friends Ramoy and Sam, Masculinity, when they did their show, and then there was a lot more things popping up that were like Other Men Need Help, for example. Mark Gaughan's show was really good in kind of introducing me to this kind of the storytelling narrative way of doing these podcasts. So it's interesting looking at the landscape, how it is now. There are a lot of people doing this now. And I think, yes, it has to do a lot with what happened in 2016.
Why? What happened? Fuck.
But it's interesting how that's changed, right? It's interesting how we're still moving forward with that, right?
It will continue to change. I mean, we were just talking about this as well too, with Apple and Spotify now monetizing, right? Podcasts. Apple for the longest time was one of the biggest backbones of the podcasting ecosystem, and they kind of built it up, but they didn't really like add anything to it. And then now they're like, oh, we can make some money off of this. Also, there's a really cheeky question from one Danny Perez in the Q&A, and since he's a Next Gen member, we are obligated to answer it. He says, so what happened in 2016?
Veronica, you can go ahead. You can tell us all what
Danny,
happened in 2016.
Why would you rub salt in the wound? But you know what? It's okay. It feels much better now. In 2016, a horrible, horrible man named Donald Trump won the American presidential election and graced us all with his heinous presence for 4 years. And he's still not going away. So that's what happened in 2016. But it really did direct people, I think, to think about, like, wow, here's the man who's, like, literally a caricature of, like, the worst version of masculinity possible. I think it made a lot more people think about it. Yeah, right? It made a lot more people think about it, though. Like, how did this happen was, I think, like a big question for a lot of people. And Jackson Katz made a really great documentary about, I think it's called The Man Card, about voting in the US and how it is tied to ideas around masculinity and how every president needs to kind of like prove that they're like a man's man in order to win. That's probably why they have never had a woman win.
Yeah. I will mark that question as answered. And for people watching this video in posterity, if you are a Next Gen member, we will answer your questions no matter how tricky they are.
We will answer all your questions.
It's true.
It's interesting though in 2016 because I remember doing this. Like I remember like it was like maybe episode 7 or something like that, and I was interviewing Omar Muallim, and he was just talking about his like when Trump was in the nominations race, and he was just like listen, this guy is a white supremacist. Like this guy is like he is a heinous man, and it's to me it's fascinating because it's like it's a major touchstone in its idea of masculinity. However, there was all these signals beforehand. Like this did not come out of nothing, right? And it's fascinating to me how, like, and not many people picked up on it. Like it was just kind of just sitting in the wings. Like the Rebel News is still there. Like Gavin McInnes was a thing. Like the Proud Boys were a thing before Trump. Like that came out of that thing too.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that, the signals weren't there. To me, it often boils down to the benefit of the doubt, right? And who we give that to. And we live in a white supremacist society, and white people get the benefit of the doubt, right? We live in a patriarchal society, and men get the benefit of the doubt, right? So I just remember this, like I was shit scared when on election night, and I like was really upset and went home and drank half a bottle of whiskey, and other people were just saying, it can't be that bad, like they gave him the benefit of the doubt, right? And I think we do it too much, right? We see it playing out. That's the Me Too movement, all that stuff as well too. For too long, people had the benefit of the doubt. Oh, he can't be a monster. He doesn't do that. That's not a pattern. So I think that's the thing that a lot of people, and we're seeing it now with this kind of pushback around like call out culture, cancel culture, these kinds of things. We're stripping people who've had long held the benefit of the doubt of that, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Veronica, did you because you were thinking about masculinity way before Trump, like we met during Med Edmonton, and that was like in 2013. I think 2013, right? I think so.
No, a little bit later. I think it was the beginning of 2015, probably.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like that.
Yeah, but I mean, you were thinking about this before. Like, did you think about, like, did you see this conversation happen into the media or anything like that? Maybe it's something that, like, again, like as a guy, I think that sometimes we just miss those conversations too, and I think we just kind of like put them aside sometimes. But did you see that because you were kind of involved, especially as a woman?
Yeah, well, I feel like I've been having conversations about masculinity since I was a kid, but like didn't necessarily always have the right language. But that's what it was when I was like 5 years old, and they were like, "You can't do that. That's for boys." I was like,
"Right.
Okay, well, that's dumb." So like you knew from like a young age you were having those conversations, and even just like bringing it up with friends, like as soon as we hit like the beginning of middle school, and all of a sudden they were like too cool, and I was just like, what happened, bro? Like, talk to me. Because I had many friends who were boys who just like went through this horrible like transformation before my eyes of like they were this like loving, energetic, like enthusiastic kid who like loved these things and had no issues like telling me that they loved those things. And then all of a sudden they're like, no, like I'm too cool for this. Like I can't talk to you. You're not cool. Or like whatever. I can't talk to you about how I feel. Well, no, it wasn't even that. It was like all of a sudden you're an object, right? You can't be friends because then you're friend zoned. So now it's like we're just okay. Like yeah. So just it was like that horrible thing. So I had been thinking about it for so long because it was like, yeah, I've just watched gender play out throughout my life and like understood where I was like, okay, well that's uncool and that's unfair and like, well that sucks for everyone. Like it sucked to watch my friends who are male go through that like process of like shriveling. Like it was just like they were so full of life and then they were just like not like, you know, apathetic and like couldn't show emotion and like just like nothing. Like it was so weird. It was like watching them become zombies like slowly and you're just like, okay. Like neat. So no, I've been thinking about it for like a really long time. Of course, then my degree was in criminology and I thought about gender all the time because we were talking about the ways in which kind of the world is like socially constructed by a lot of different forces that push people one way or another, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm thinking about if I go back to teenage Herman or even just like young adult Herman, and you know, obviously that there was like this idea of what I wanted to be as a man, and a lot of that came from like, you know, of course, comes from your friends and it comes from your family and it comes from your community. But a lot of that came out from media and it came from movies and it came from TV shows, but it also came from like the magazines and stuff like that. Like, I'm just thinking of like, you know, I was a GQ subscriber for like 2 years, you know, like Esquire and things like that. Like those were the guys that I kind of like, oh, I wanted like, this guy's cool. Like, but it was a very specific type of guy, right? It was like the stylish man. It was like, this man had a lot of money. This man was popular. This man was, could be an actor, could be something else. And it's interesting how my view of like what a good man has, you know, shaped throughout my years. And a lot of it has to do with like the people I hang out with and also like, you know, being in this space as well. But like, I just remember how much things like that, like the masculinity media has shaped the way I thought about what a man was. Jacob, you had that same experience?
Yeah, I mean, like I grew up a jock. And so I was like really steeped in it, you know, in and out of locker rooms my whole life, traveling and getting the status of just, you know, even at my high school, I don't think I was anyone special. Like, I don't think I had like a large redeeming characteristic because like, you know, I think I'm way more comfortable in myself now with who I am than, you know, high school is awkward. But I still, you know, you walk around, you tower over everyone. Oh, that's Jake the basketball player, right? And that buys you a certain cachet. Same thing when I went away to university. Oh, that's Jake the varsity basketball player, right? Like, so that status card was always there. Wrap that up in, you know, being the white straight guy and working at the campus bar and all that stuff. And despite all that, you know, I was struggling with mental health and an internal script of you got to be tough. You can't show emotion. You can't ask for help. And, you know, now hindsight's 2020. I realized that I didn't necessarily inherit like the patriarchy from my dad because he was very equitable and caring and those kinds of things. But I 100% inherited the stoicism and that kind of unemotional, untalkative piece. And that really harmed me. And then, you know, then we think about the masculinity media and stuff like that. I was a Men's Health subscriber for a really long time. And I give them a lot of credit because I think the magazine's changed a lot under like new editorial leadership in recent years. But when I was reading it, you know, like now they have male sex toys in there, right? Like for like male prostate sex toys. And like if I think back of like when I was reading Men's Health, that hell no, that wouldn't have been in there, right? And it was about body image, but I was wrapped up in the body image stuff because of being an athlete as well too. Like I look at like, you know, my peak physical condition when I was playing semi-pro basketball at like 23. And like, I look at that now and I'm 32 and I'm like, oh man, I had it so good. And at the time I hated my body, right? And it was like doing things like these amazing things for me and I didn't appreciate it. And then, I mean, going on a journey after that. And you also know, as much as I'm a podcast listener, I'm a huge book nerd. And so like I read, what was called The Game in university, right? And in university, like I wasn't smart enough. I thought of it as like, maybe this is kind of a manual. Like maybe if I like, you know, implement some of these things, I'll have more success and those kinds of things, right? Like now I can look back and look at it differently. And I did read his follow-up book, but basically to end that riff or rant, media, and when you're impressionable and you're not anchored in who you are and what you stand for and the things you care about in the world, it's again, anchor, you have a sail, you're open to things, and the wind is the media and it pushes you in a direction. So I think it's something really important to talk about and think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. Yeah, anyone who says that they're like not affected by the media, I'm just like, sorry, what? Like, I think you need to rethink your position. You certainly are.
The only time I would maybe give them, again, the benefit of the doubt is if I ask them like what media they consume. And if they said, I watch MSNBC News and then I watch Fox News. Nobody does that. They choose one and they kind of filter it through their preferred lens of what they want to hear. But if you did take that opportunity to like look at it from the multiple angles, then you start to understand things a bit better, or at least have a middle road.
Yeah. But you are still influenced.
Oh,
like, regardless of what you consume, whether or not it is multiple sides or whatever, everyone is like influenced. Like you can't get away from media at all. Like not now. Like you're gonna see TV, you're gonna read magazines, you're gonna watch movies, you're gonna like listen to podcasts or the radio, you're gonna see ads. Like fuck, ads are like everywhere. You know, you can't say that you aren't.
Ads is an interesting one. I have a question for you all. Do you like this new reality of like quote unquote tailored ads? Or would you prefer to go back to the old reality of like shotgun ads and you'll see lots of things you're like, that has nothing to do with me. I don't even want to see that.
I think it's like, targeted ads can be manipulative. I definitely have been like talked about something like right now we're moving and we're just like, I remember we're like, hey, we should buy a couch. And I swear to God, I saw like couch ads on my feed and I'm just like, this is ridiculous.
Stop listening to me talk.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. However, I do understand like the idea of like targeted ads. Like I totally think that's like, you know, it's a marketing scheme and I get it, right? It's just I don't want to turn into the like I don't know if you remember like watching like Minority Report and there's like a scene where like you see like they would like they would like read your eyes and they would tell you who you are. So be like John Connor. You're like, John Connor, do you want a Pepsi? John Connor, do you want this? Do you want like it'll tell you by name. And he's like, hey, I heard that you are looking for a new car. Like there was a scene in Minority Report that's the way it works, and you're like, I don't want that life at all.
So creepy.
That is creepy. So I don't know. I feel like it might go there, and I worry about that. However, I understand, and I think like going back to your point about like listening to different sides, like I don't know if I can stand like Fox News. Like I don't know if I would do that. Like, however, I'm definitely more like attuned to being like, where is this coming from? Where is this piece of media coming from? Like, is this a sponsored material? Who is the writer? Where are they coming from? I'm very used to right now, like looking at the author and being like, who are they? Like, are they coming from the Fraser Institute? Is this coming from, like, it's usually there's like a
Taxpayers Federation.
Yeah, exactly. Or there's like sometimes like it's like like this wonderful ad about a wonderful opinion article about oil industry. And it's like the CEO of like Suncor, and you're like, oh yeah, of course. So like I'm used to that now. I'm very used to like I'm trying to understand where these things coming from, right? Who's writing it and where are they coming from, right?
My favorite recent example was WeWork's new CEO came out with a piece that said the most engaged employees are the ones that want to go back to the office.
Yeah, I saw that too. People just ripped it apart.
Yeah, so funny. No, I don't want to come off as like legitimizing as like, oh, if you listen to the Fox News side of things, then you have a good perspective. Like there's definitely like hyper partisanship, and I'm gonna bring up. You all know that I love Seth Godin. He wrote a piece recently, and he said there's a difference between skepticism and denialism, right? And skepticism is like you're questioning, but you're willing and open to change your mind based on the facts. You have a criteria to say, if I can understand this, then maybe I'll change my mind about it. Whereas denialism outright says like, I don't want to know anything about it. And so I think it's fine to have a skeptical bent about certain things from a certain lens, whether we say that's a progressive lens or a conservative lens or these kinds of things. But an outright denialism lens really gets us nowhere.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, media literacy is like a super important thing that I really don't think we teach very much. And like just straight up critical thinking, right? Like you were saying, Herman, like, okay, who wrote this? Like, what do I need to know about the author? Like, what might be some of the goals of something like this? And yeah, it's one of those things.
Yeah, definitely. And just to tie this in a neat little bow, is the reason why we wanted to talk about the media, and we talked about a little bit about modern manhood in general, was because and we briefly mentioned it, is because modern manhood is coming back, and so modern manhood is thinking about the conversation of like how I was as a teenager and how like made us all kind of think about what creates a guy in 2021, and meaning like how many things get influenced by this person, who influences them, and who teaches them how to be a guy. And this happens before they're born all the way till they die. And so we wanted to investigate that a little bit further. And so taking our story, so I'm very happy to announce that Modern Manhood is coming back on May 20th. So make sure if you're not subscribed already, please do that. The amazing thing is that not only is Danny Perez being a part of Modern Manhood, as we just found out, but Ramoy and Samantha from Masculinity as well too are also helping on this podcast as well. And so they've been a fantastic team. And I think I really hope that you love the first episode that's coming out. I love it so far. I think it's the best Modern Manhood has ever been. I think it's the way that I've always thought Modern Manhood to be, but I couldn't do because I was just one person. So I'm so happy to be working with a team that does it so well. And Cold Takes will also come back as well in not only our normal format, but this format as well. So not only we wanted to have this conversation about masculinity media because we want to walk the talk too, right? We want to be able to just say this is something that you can consume and to hopefully give you a good perspective of what's going on in masculinity in general, but also gives you a fresh look from behind. So yeah, I'm happy to announce that right today. So
Yay.
I'm very excited, very excited. Yes. And I have to say that this cannot be done without you, without the Next Gen members, without the Next Gen family. So, excuse me, we wanted to do this as kind of a brief thank you to some of our members, and we're going to try to do this in every single episode that we do. So here's some shout outs. So because of you, we're doing this episode. So first of all, I want to thank Patrick Garcia, Eric Schwenger, Ramsey Kalani, Michael Stark, and Amy Robichaud. Did I say those right, Jake? Hope so.
Eric Schwenger, super volunteer out of Quesnel, BC. We love him. Amy Robichaud, good friend, Vancouver, BC, executive director of Dress for Success. Ramsey, we know.
Yeah.
Ramsey Kalani, we know. Yeah, those are great people. That's the family. Those are the Next Gen members.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah.
And so we'll be saying a lot of those names out and just saying like, thank you, thank you, thank you. There's no way we could do this without your support and your help. And please tell people as well. So if you hear this episode and you're like, you love it, and you hear about it and you're like, you know what, I want to support you, please head on over to nextgenmen.ca/join. You can help them join to the Next Gen Men family as well. Subscribe to Modern Madness, subscribe to Ordic Valuta, subscribe to Breaking the Boy Code. We are going to have more people come up to Cold Takes. And also, don't forget to ask us questions. When we do this show, we're in your hands. Like, you can ask us anything, and we'll try to answer the question as best we can. So when we do this stuff, like we take our lives in your hands. So please hold us lightly, but at the same time, it's much more fun once you interact as well too. And we might even ask you to like come inside the show and just like say hey. So that's one of the perks that we want to give you as Next Gen members. So if you're not a Next Gen member, you can't do that. So if you want to do that, go for it and do that. So again, that's nextgenmen.ca/join. Yeah. Is there any last words, Veronica?
What is Jake pointing to?
Because you got last words. I know what you're going to say.
What? No, you don't. I don't even know what I'm going to say. But mostly, I'm just glad to be back. And I'm glad that Modern Manhood's coming back. Thank you. Oh, thank you. And yeah, glad that Cold Takes is coming back. Also, a little disappointed in myself that I prepared so much to talk about language today, and then we didn't talk as much about it as I thought we would. So
what a shock.
I have whatever. I have content for future stuff.
I know you do. We'll do that.
Anyway, it's totally cool. But yes, please do come out as well. We have a Next Gen Men's Circle event happening on May 20th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. I know we jump around time zones, so I always want to make sure I'm like highlighting time zones so no one gets stressed or confused. But yes, 7 p.m. Mountain, we're talking about raising feminist children. And anyone is welcome. Obviously, you don't have to be a parent. Folks of all genders, backgrounds, anything, ages, I suppose. We do have youth occasionally join. But yes, we want to talk about kind of how we would put feminist principles into practice when it comes to parenting, because so far I haven't managed to find a feminist parenting course anywhere. But yeah, definitely something that lots of people are thinking about with regards to like how they want to raise their little ones in a world that isn't yet, gender equal. How do we work on that world while working on ourselves, while trying to implement like feminist parenting practices with our kids? It's a lot. So it's really the start of a conversation. And if folks are like, wow, I wish you had more hands-on things, then it makes a better case for, future workshops that can be a little more hands-on if folks are looking for that.
I was just going to ask you, you haven't heard of a feminist parenting course? Because I've heard of one very recently.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I think it extends beyond parenting, actually. But yes, we do have our online course called Raising Next Gen Men, and I would definitely encourage folks to check that out as well. It's like a dive into like all the vocabulary you'd want when it comes to talking about masculinity. How do you approach those topics with boys? How do you talk to them about like consent and homophobia and stuff like that? Kind of giving some of those more practical tools again to use with boys, which is great for parents, but also great for educators and great for other people who work with youth. So yeah, is that what you wanted, Jake?
Totally. All about the plug.
Plugging away. Jake, any last words from you, my friend?
No, I'm super excited for the Next Gen Men Podcast Network. It's been really great seeing the team work together. The audio is fire, and I'm really excited for this new Cold Takes format. I think it's going to be interactive. It's going to be fun. People are going to see our faces, and it's a bit unscripted. We're going to be in our uncharted waters, which is always fun.
Is it?
Yep. It'll be good. It'll be good. We're going to bring Veronica into some comfortable unscripted situations. We're just going to have way more over-prepared stuff, and it's just going to always bring out the good stuff, though. So I'm very excited for this. I hope you're excited as well. And yeah, so we'll hopefully see you soon. Actually, like again, May 20th is when the new Modern Manhood episode will come out, and then we're going to do another Cold Takes probably at the start of June. So be aware for that. And again, this is all brand new to us. We're still kind of trying out this format. Hopefully, it works for you. And let us know if you have any feedback for us as well, like things that you want to talk about. Put it in the inner circle and just say, you know what, Herman, Veronica, can you talk about this? I would love to hear a conversation about this. Please do so. And also as well, please follow us on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow, hopefully you follow already Next Gen Men and at Next Gen Men. You can also follow me on Instagram at Modern Man Pod. You can also follow Danny at Oreja Peluda. I think it's Oreja Peluda Pod on Instagram, if I'm not mistaken. So please do that. Follow if you're on Instagram. You know what? We'll have some more stuff on there too. So just be aware of that. But yeah, that's it. That's all I have. Hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time on Cold Takes.
Hasta luego, amigos.
Bye.
Bye.